and it's always uncertain, are other people's thoughts, other people's actions. We don't know what people are going to think, and we don't know what people are going to say or do. We have no idea. We can think we do. We can predict what we think others will do, but we have no idea, and there's no way to control it. I can't control how you're going to react in a certain situation. So if I'm standing in front of people and telling a story,
Brian, welcome to the show. And as I told you, I am so excited to pick your brain, and I'm like really excited that you're here right now today.
I really appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Like all the things that you have done in your life, I was like, where should this conversation lead to us? But then I thought about something that is really near and dear to my heart. As I was sharing with you, I am competing. I'm doing martial arts, jiu-jitsu for a year. And I always thought I was amazing in controlled chaos. I was always so proud because when everything was going crazy, I could be my most focused self until I competed in jiu-jitsu. And because normally I'm good with controlling my thoughts. If something is happening, I'm meditating a lot, so I'm letting it go. I could not do anything. I was so not proud of myself. And then I realized I need to have more research. But for the second competition, nothing helped. I think you're the best person who can give me tips. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So this aspect of our lives, we can apply to any other aspect. So keep listening for people. It's not just about sports and performing in sports. It's about whole life. But personally, how can we have a good performance under pressure? What happens when we are under pressure, and why do we forget everything that we think that we know?
That's interesting. Well, there are a few good things in there. First, let me start with this. I love the fact that you brought up that we can generalize what we learn in one area to other areas. That's something that I emphasize to clients on the very first call. When I'm doing a discovery call with a potential client, I let them know. I said, look, I'm not, let's say it's an athlete, maybe it's a swimmer. I said, I certainly hope that what it is that I teach you helps you be at your best, and that allows you to win some trophies or get some medals or whatever it is that you're doing. But that's not what it is that I truly care about. What I truly care about is providing you with some skills and some techniques that you can use, yes, in swimming, but more broadly throughout your whole life to see benefits with your friends and with your loved ones and in your jobs, at wherever you happen to find yourself. And swimming is a great place. Athletics is a wonderful place to test these things out, to practice them, excuse me, to gain proficiency in the use of them, but they aren't at all only usable in those specific environments. They are absolutely helpful everywhere else. So thank you for bringing that up. As far as pressure, it's an interesting thing because, yeah, I've been a stuntman for 30 years. I've worked in a lot of TV shows and movies, and I've done, a lot of things that most people would say, yeah, that's a pressure situation. You need to perform under pressure. But I'll tell you, pressure's not inevitable. And as I've thought about that more, and this idea of pressure and when we experience it, when we don't, at least from my own perspective, as well as once I got into the academic literature of it too, pressure comes from within us. The way that I like to put it is pressure exists in the mind, not in the moment. Meaning that there's no such thing as a pressure situation. There's no situation that you and I could both go into and reliably both experience pressure each time. In other words, there are things that you're completely comfortable doing that if the stakes were high, you'd still be fine and you'd be in there and you wouldn't really experience pressure in that moment. You'd just experience excitement and it would be fun for you. Whereas if you put me in that same situation, well, I might experience a lot of pressure, particularly if the stakes are very, very high. So it's not about the situation. The example that I like to use is this, and this is just even from my own perspective, not comparing to other people. I was working on a TV show. It was a long time ago. It was a TV show called VIP. It was a show. Pamela Anderson was the star of it. And I was in the back of this truck. It was like a U-Haul moving truck. And it was driving down the road about 15 miles an hour. And my job was to come flying out the back of it, looking like I'd gotten thrown, hit the ground and roll. Well, then about a month ago, and while I'm standing in the back of the truck and we're driving down the road, I'm experiencing a lot of pressure. There were a lot of really high level, big, important, successful stunt people who were on set. They were stunt coordinators. They They stunt coordinated very, very big movies and shows, and they were all staring at me. They were all watching this thing happen. And to me, in my mind, I'm thinking, if I get this wrong, I may never work again. Like, it's going to make it around. Everybody's going to think I look stupid. It's going to affect my career, my ability to progress. But I also tried to flip that around. Like, well, yeah, but what if I get it right? If I get it right, these guys can hire me on these shows. I'm going to make a bunch of money. My career's going to be set. But either way I thought about it, I experienced a lot of pressure. Well, again, cut to about a month ago, I was working on a TV show called The Righteous Gemstones on Max, I think it is. And same thing. I'm in the back of a truck driving down the road, and it hits a bump. And then the back of the truck, it's an SUV, comes flying up. I come flying out the back of it, hit the ground, and start rolling. So it's the exact same stunt, but this time I experienced no pressure. None, not even a little bit. Before the stunt, when we were sitting around waiting to go, we were joking around with the actor who was driving the car. There was another stuntman in the truck with me. We were just talking, hanging out. They called action. I got myself into position, got my hand where it needed to be, because my hands were tied actually with ropes. So I came out, I wasn't able to. They were just tied up. So anyway, I had to get my hands in the right position to pull the latch to get the thing to go up. But there wasn't any pressure. There was nothing that I was experiencing other than just focus and looking forward to what was coming. So my point is this: two situations, almost identical. One created a great deal of pressure in me, and the other created none. So if it was the situation itself that caused pressure, well, then I should have experienced pressure each time, but I didn't. So that makes me curious. Okay, well, why did I experience pressure in one circumstance and not the other? And the reason's exactly what I just said. The first one, I was focused on the consequences, the outcomes, the possible bad things, but also possible good things. The bottom line is I wasn't paying attention to what was happening in the moment. My head was in the future. I was not in the present. So when we focus on the potential outcomes, particularly when those outcomes are in our minds important, and they absolutely can be important. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay any consequences of potential situations. I mean, I've worked with the military. There are some situations that some of the special forces, special operations people that I've worked with, they're absolutely the consequences are dire. Same thing in stunts. There are some things that I've done where if they don't go right, either I or somebody I'm working with may not go home that night. So I'm not downplaying the consequences. The consequences can be very important. But the point is that if I want to perform well in that situation, and I want to experience success, I want the desired outcome to occur, I can't focus on that outcome. And I certainly can't focus on the consequences of that outcome, meaning all the bad things that will happen if I screw up, or even all the great things that will happen if I do it well. Where I have to put my attention is in the moment, right now. What are the things that I can do right now in this situation that set me up for success, to create conditions for me to achieve what I want to achieve? Now, I can't guarantee that I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, but I can absolutely create conditions that make that more likely to occur. So when it comes to pressure, again, it's not at all about the situation. It is about where our attention is focused and being able to sustain that attention, find that most important thing and engage in that. That's where pressure will disappear. It can't exist if we are in the present moment, focusing on what we can control and executing that. There will be no pressure.
So interesting. And me remembering myself, I was putting so much pressure on myself, but then I couldn't let go of that pressure. Where months before my competition, we had like children's competition, and I've never done it. And I had to be in one corner of the children guides, like this red corner. My friend, who should have been in blue corner, she suddenly decided she cannot do it. Then I had to be in like both corners. And my first thought was like, oh my, I've never done this. And now I have to be. But then I was like, honey, you've got this, because I can be good at that. Then I managed that, and it was amazing. From like 12 to 5, have not stopped, 137 fights, but I managed that. But why was it that if I'm good at one aspect of that, and then suddenly I am competing, and week before I stopped sleeping, I couldn't sleep. My heart was constantly beating fast about thinking of the competition. So that's why I'm asking, like, it's so interesting. If I can let go of that, which I never done that, but I can have trust in myself, how can I not apply the same things? Do you have like any other tips where it's like really my heart is beating fast, I cannot breathe, I cannot sleep for a week before? And so like that's so interesting. Are there any tips that you have that when we're like in really under a lot of pressure that we can do something about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, if I were, if you were a client of mine and we were working together about
Yeah.
this, on this problem, I would ask, well, what was it about the competition that was problematic for you? Because again, if our mind is on, okay, a week from now I have this competition, it's not the competition that's causing pressure. It's something you're thinking about the competition. Well, if I go in and I do badly, or what if I go in and get hurt, or what if I look stupid in front of people, or what if I don't know, what if I, it's all what ifs. And that's the thing that is, you ask for a technique. Well, one is, once you start realizing that you're experiencing pressure, that should be a red flag that your attention's in the wrong place and that you're
Okay.
probably stuck in the future. And that future is probably being perceived, you're probably verbalizing it as, what if this?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to recognize that the future doesn't exist yet. It's imaginary. It's not real. So we're creating all of these emotions and all of these, or we're experiencing all of these emotions based on something that's not real. Now, it could be real in the future. What you're thinking actually might manifest, but it's not real right now. And what is going to affect the future is what we do right now. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
worried about what's going to happen in the future, the best question to ask is, okay, yes, that's a possible consequence. That's a fine thing to understand and to recognize and to be aware of. In fact, there's something in the military that they call contingency planning. If there's a mission coming up, then they think about all the bad things that might come up, that might be a problem, so that they can take the steps to mitigate those, to, if not eliminate them, at least reduce those problems.
That's one.
So they bring those ideas to mind. So for example, if they're going on a mission, well, what if we get a flat tire? Well, let's bring a pump and let's bring some extra tires. Well, what if we run out of gas? Well, we make sure we have a fuel truck. What if we run out of water? Well, we've got the supply. So, we have to eat. How does that happen? I mean, so all this stuff, like what if the weather is bad? Well, then we're going to take these steps. So the contingency planning is useful, but only because there's that next step. If we get stuck in the what ifs, that becomes overwhelming and it becomes very anxiety provoking. And that's what we experience as pressure. What we need to do is, again, if pressure is what's happening, recognize it, let it be an indicator for us that we need to take it a step further. What if I get hurt at the competition? Well, then I'm hurt and I will heal and I'll take the steps. I've probably been hurt before. If I'm a competitor, if I'm an athlete, I know what that's like. It's not fun, but I also know that I'm going to heal from it. Well, what if I look stupid? Well, so what if I look stupid? I'm going to learn something. Everybody learns, everybody fails. Nobody's perfect all the time. And who cares what somebody's thinking, as long as I'm pursuing my dream, my goals, my pursuits. And so there's that aspect that can also reduce pressure. But then there's the critical question of, okay, well, what if I look stupid in front of people, or what if I get hurt? Okay, I don't want that. What can I do right now that will hopefully lessen the likelihood of those bad consequences that I don't want to occur happening? Well, I can make sure that I get enough sleep. I can make sure that I eat right. I can make sure that I train and stretch and am flexible. So that will help me be at my best physically and help reduce the likelihood of injury, particularly the flexibility part with jiu-jitsu. You get bent in all kinds of crazy positions. So, under having flexibility is very important. Mentally, what can I do right now mentally to help me be better in that moment? Well, maybe it's some mental imagery that you do, imagining some of the things that, some of the moves that maybe you're not quite as comfortable with, imagining yourself doing them very well, imagining yourself being stuck in a certain position that you're not necessarily comfortable with or are afraid of, and doing whatever counter to that move is the right one and doing it well and having it be successful. Emotionally, what can we do? Recognize the anxiety and take the steps to mitigate that, to put our focus here in the present moment. And one of the biggest things is socially, just having a conversation with somebody. When we're experiencing pressure, again, by definition, we are in our heads. If we get out of our head, not by definition, maybe we can experience pressure when talking to other people if we're telling them about all the bad things. So if I'm talking to you, if I'm under pressure and I'm talking to you, like, my goodness, what if I go into this thing and I completely blow it? And what if I lose my job? And what if I can't pay my bills? If I'm talking to you about that, then yes, I'll experience pressure. But if we can get out of our own minds, out of ourselves and into somebody else, if we can put our attention outside of us and onto something in the outside world, that can also reduce pressure. This is one of the things that the 12-step programs for addiction make really good use of this type of technique, because they tell people you need to go help somebody. If you're feeling like you want to drink or use drugs or whatever it is, you're in your own mind. You're experiencing craving in your own self. You got to get out of yourself. So put yourself in somebody else. How can you help somebody? Who can you contribute to? How might you be beneficial out in the world? And if you put your energies there, it takes your attention off of you, which will lessen the pressure. So
Mm.
thinking about lessening the pressure from the standpoint of physical, what am I doing with my body, etc. Mental, where's my mind, and what can I tune it to and focus it on? Emotional, what types of emotions do I want to experience? For example, if I'm experiencing pressure, I'm typically experiencing a lot of nervousness, anxiety, fear. But one of the things, in the research that can help alleviate that is by consciously, deliberately, intentionally creating positive emotions like gratitude or joy or love or curiosity. These are positive emotions. This is coming from, for anybody who's a research theory geek like I am, broaden and build theory is the name of it. Barbara Fredrickson is the guru for that. But yeah, so positive emotions, when we elicit positive emotions, they can dampen the effects of negative emotions that we've experienced. So how do we do that? Well, again, I talked about mental imagery, imagining a situation that brought you joy, imagining somebody who's really close to you in your life, and really the connection that you felt in their presence, imagining the growth and improvement, imagining who knew you might meet at the place to elicit some curiosity, just being grateful for the fact you're even going to the competition in the first place. How many people would love to be able to go to that and just don't have either the skills or the resources to do that? Gratitude is one of the strongest positive emotions. If we can elicit that, man, it does. It goes a long way toward alleviating some of
I
those
agree.
pressure feelings that we have. So those are some of the strategies. And again, and if I'm working with a client, we get obviously much more specific than that, related to them, what they've tried, what they haven't tried, their specific worries and challenges that they experience. But in general, those are the directions that I will often go.
One thing I do is I think Gary Vee was talking about this. He imagines like people who he loves being dead, and then when they're not dead, he's grateful. I have done that. When everything is going well, but I'm focused on this one problem, I'm like, I imagine that something happened to my mom, and then I'm so grateful that she's alive and she's healthy, and
Yeah.
gratitude really helps. But I
Yeah, and
asked,
you can do that too. I apologize for interrupting. You can do that too, even with specific things. So, for example, let's say somebody's driving down the road and their car breaks down, and then they're standing on the side of the road and they're very frustrated, they're very angry, and they're just, in this horrible state of emotional state. Well, you could have gotten in a car wreck, and there might be injuries involved, and somebody that you care about who might be riding in the car with you could also be injured. So imagining, even within the situations that we find ourselves, like the competition, yes, maybe I go to the competition and I look stupid, but I could also get very injured, and I'm not injured. I didn't do well and I'm not
Mhm.
really proud of how it is that my performance went. So we can do that same thing you're talking about in those other, just even very, very specifically in those contexts. Another thing you mentioned, our own problems. Another way to think about it is, and this is, I, I always, I try to stay away from always as a thing, but very, very likely, if you thought to yourself, somebody in this world, if they were to have the opportunity to trade places with me, would gladly take my problems over theirs. Whatever problem I'm experiencing right now, whatever badness I'm in the middle of, chances are there is more than one person on this planet who would be happy to trade places with me,
Mhm.
where I had their problems and they had mine. And that's another really helpful, at least for me, has been a really helpful
Yeah.
perspective to take too when I'm struggling with generating gratitude.
Yeah, well then when I went through my divorce, that's like I told myself this is gonna be the beginning of the best era of my life. And then I thought with all reasons why. And then I was like, I already have a child. Like, how many women are struggling that they don't even have a child? I was like, I'm done with life. Like, if I didn't have a child and then being divorced, I'm 28 right now. But then I would have thought, oh my God, you know how it goes? Like, my clock is ticking. I don't have any of that. I can enjoy my life. I'm pretty. I look good. I have a child. So that's really helps because if I went down another road, I would have felt so bad. But like just changing the perception of my life is just starting now changed my own experience. So you're right, gratitude helped changing the perception of if it was someone else's, someone would gladly take over my problems.
Yeah.
Just like perception change helps a lot with any aspect of your life.
Yeah. Well, and specifically with pressure. So let's go just taking it specifically back to pressure. Like I said, pressure exists when we focus on the potential outcomes, whether they be good or bad. If we think that they're dire, big, important consequences that can be life changing, if that's our perspective, then we're going to experience pressure more and more and more the bigger we think these consequences are. And like I said, I don't want to minimize anything. Sometimes the consequences really are big, but sometimes they're not. So if you're talking about losing a competition or getting knocked out in the first round of a competition, or I mean, any
It
number of
wasn't any of that, to
things.
be honest. It was not the injury. It was not the loss. That's why I was curious because you have really went through a high pressure. You had moments of really high pressure. That's why I was curious because it was none of that. I wasn't scared of injury. I have been injured and I'm fine. I was not scared of losing. I have lost before and I was fine. I don't know what it was. So maybe it's something specifically to competition that is different than any aspect of the life, because someone might be really good at storytelling in small circles, but the moment they stand in front of the huge crowd, they cannot say anything. And they might be thinking that, okay, if I'm good with other aspects or dealing with challenging in other aspects, why cannot I be really good in this one aspect of my life? Someone
Mhm.
listening might think that. So that's why I asked that question. Is there anything else you could do, which you already answered? But there was no thought of me losing pressure from people or anything like that. So that's why it was very interesting.
Yeah, well, it is interesting when we experience this stuff and we don't expect to. There are a couple things that come to mind. One is just uncertainty. When we're going into situations that are uncertain, that we haven't experienced, that we're not sure how things are going to go, that is a place where pressure can build because we're not really sure what the consequences are. And so even if we don't have specific consequences in our minds, we're worried about what the consequences are at all because we don't know. It's uncertain. And that can
And that's
be
a good one.
and one of those things too, with regard to, just for to take your example of the storytellers, one of the things that's uncertain, and it's always uncertain, and this is something that we don't, I believe we don't take this into account as much as we should. What is always uncertain are other people's thoughts, other people's actions. We don't know what people are going to think, and we don't know what people are going to say or do. We have no idea. We can think we do. We can predict what we think others will do, but we have no idea. And there's no way to control it. I can't control how you're going to react in a certain situation. So if I'm standing in front of people and telling a story, one of the things that might be creating pressure for me is that the consequences are uncertain. And those consequences are how people will react to me, how they will think about what I'm saying, how they will perceive all of that. Like, and I just don't know, and I can't know, and I can't change it, which is another thing that can cause this feeling of pressure for people. They want to control all the situation, but they can't. You have to let go of the things you can't control. So that's why I said, in terms of pressure, switching our attention from the consequence to the present moment and focusing on what we can do now. But even within that, we have to recognize that right now I can only do what I can do. There are many, many things that I can't change. Now I can influence things. For example, if my success would be greatly enhanced by you, if something that you do would help me succeed, I can't make you do that thing, but I can influence you. I could have a conversation with you. I could try to convince you that helping me might be beneficial for both of us. That's an influence, but I can't control it. I can't make you do that. So sometimes the pressure can come from that sense of uncertainty, and the uncertainty can be generated by that perceived lack of control. There's nothing I can do. I'm at the mercy of the universe. I'm just coasting along and I have no idea what's going to happen or how it's all going to work. That can create a sense of pressure as well.
Lack of control. I think that was it. I think it hits my lack of control because when it's just me, even the example that I shared prior, the competition, children's competition, it was all about me. So I know when it's all about me, I can control myself. But I'm competing with someone else and I have no idea what that person is going to do. So I think it was the lack of control. To like recap a little bit, so you said few tips that I remember was to be in the present moment. Because when something like this is happening, your mind is going in the future, or you are thinking about all the negative what ifs, which, as you said before, if you prepare yourself, it's good. But like in the moment when you're competing or like public speaking, just be present. And uncertainty and lack of control, I like those too, because so many people are nervous because of uncertainty and they have no idea how the things are going to go because they cannot control, as you said, people's actions and reactions, and lack of control because some people love to take control over situations like I do. And when they have lack of control, all the pressure is on them and it's hard for them to control it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean a few things with it just I know that we're running out of time, so I'm going to just tack on to what you just said, which is yes, if we're experiencing pressure, our attention is on the consequences. It's out in the future. And if we're experiencing pressure, again, let that be an indication that I need to pay attention
Red
to the
flags, as
fact
you
that I'm
said.
probably thinking that. And here are some ways, like just thinking, okay, if I'm paying attention to all the bad things that might happen, number one, are they really that likely to happen? They may be, they may not be. And recognizing the fact that we may be blowing something out of proportion, that we might be making it bigger in our minds than it actually is. We may be making the likelihood of these things occurring more than it actually is. That recognition can help.
Mm-hmm.
Also recognizing that, okay, well, let's say that these bad things did happen. Is that really the end of the world? I mean, is there not a way that I can learn from? What is a way that I might be able to get better? You mentioned a divorce. I've been through two of them. Well,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
moment, it was very hard, to go through that. But looking back on it, I recognize, well, that was that opened doors that I never expected to be opened. That moved me in productive, helpful, wonderful directions that I never imagined when I was going through it. So challenging ourselves to reckon, okay, let's imagine that bad thing does happen. Is there any good that can come out of that? Is there anything beneficial that can happen? And then even changing it further to, okay, but is there anything, what are the best things that could happen out of this situation? Not what if I screw up, but what if I kill it? What if I do well? What if I really succeed at a very high level? Then what? Let's put our attention there. And all of those things can help minimize and lower pressure, but they will not get rid of it. And I believe that in order for us to perform our best, we must eliminate pressure. And how does that happen? We're in the moment. Because the example I like to use is soccer, football for people around the world, because it's this. I want to win the game. Winning the game is the most important thing. Our team's been working. We got to win the game. If we win the game, we get to go to this thing. Big consequences, a lot of pressure. We got to win the game. Okay, great. Well, let me ask you this. How are you going to win the game? Well, we need to score more goals than the other team scores. Great. That's the right answer. For sure you need to. So how are you going to do that? Well, we need to make sure that we pass well and we have to shoot well and we need to get up off the ground when we make mistakes and get back into the game really quickly and we need to challenge and be aggressive on defense. Yes, that's the answer. That's what you need to do. And those are things you can do right now. Those are the
Mm.
things that you can take control of in this moment. You can't control the other team and what they do, but you absolutely can control how well you pass and how well you dribble and the types of shots you take and the aggressiveness of your defense. Sure, you can do that. That's where the attention needs to lie. And when our focus is there on those things that are productive and helpful, that move us toward our success, pressure goes away. So there you go. Pressure.
No, those are very actionable tips. You mentioned divorce, I mentioned divorce, now you mentioned soccer, I was talking about sports and competition. But these are the things like going through a divorce can be a huge pressure, especially with society. So people can apply all of this to any aspect of their life. Someone might feel pressure to be a perfect mother, a perfect father. Anything can be pressure. It doesn't have to be a really stressful situation, just physically or in sports. Anything you stress yourself over can be a pressure that you put on yourself, or maybe not willingly, but society puts you, your family members, God knows what's happening in people's lives. So those tips are amazing and people can start there. Sometimes people accept, okay, this is just, I'm not good at it and I cannot do this. But maybe after listening to you, they can be like, okay, maybe I can try these tips and then I can achieve and I can be good in this thing too. So you gave people hope I loved how when you said lack of control, that's my brain went like, that's it. That's it. That was the lack of control. You helped me personally. And thank you so much for being my guest today here. But before we finish, I want to ask you, is there anything you want to add to this conversation? Maybe anything I have not asked you?
No, this has been fantastic, and you're grabbing on to that uncertainty, to that lack of
Mhm.
control. That's such a powerful thing. It is something that so many of us struggle with. This idea that we need to control our environment, that we have to that we can control more than we can, and the
Yeah.
recognition of what we can't control and how many things actually in our lives that we cannot control, and our ability to just accept that and live within what it is that's happening. Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean accept, meaning resignation. Like, okay, my situation is like this. There's nothing I can do about it. So I just need to sit here in the badness. That's not what I mean. I just mean accepting reality as it is. I can't control you. If I struggle with myself, if I beat myself up over the fact or I keep trying to control you and I get frustrated because I can't, that's not productive. That's not helpful.
Mhm.
So I just need to accept the fact I cannot control you, and then work with that reality to move forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something to focus on. So thank you
Only thing we have
for that.
control over is ourselves, and we cannot even fully control that. So
That's true.
we can start
That is
there.
true.
We can just say it is what it is. What it is. Now what? I think that's good point that you said. Accepting doesn't mean that okay, we're like okay, this is how it is. We can say it is what it is, but now what do I have control over? Thank you, Brian, for this conversation. What would be your last message to me and to our listeners? It can be a quote or a sentence, even a movie or a book or a TV show, as you have been in many TV shows, but something that is really near and dear to your heart right now.
To me, the thing that I wish more people really knew and believed in is opportunity. It's there all the time. Opportunities come every single day. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with Eminem. He has a song, "The Music, the moment you own it, you never let it go." And in
Love,
that song, he says,
adore him.
you know, you only there's one moment, one opportunity, and it only comes once, and that's true in the sense that right now in this moment there's an opportunity, and that opportunity is only going to come one time, but there
Mm-hmm.
will be others, and the next one and the next one and the next one. And so what I encourage people to do is just a few things. Number one, stay open to the ideas that opportunities are coming, and that they are there, and that they're numerous. And if we're open to it, if we keep an open mind, then we will recognize them when they come. But when we recognize them, sometimes we don't take advantage of them. In order to do that, we have to be flexible. And what I mean by that is we often are focused on our own goals. We have our own objectives that we're trying to achieve. But if we stay open to opportunities, sometimes those opportunities would move us in a different direction. But if we are rigid, if we aren't flexible and we just say, nope, can't take that opportunity because I already said I was going to do this. I already said this is my goal and I'm going to achieve it. So I can't take that opportunity. I have to keep going with what I'm doing. That's not helpful either, because your goal may have been fine with the information that you had when you said it and what your circumstances were when you said it, but you've lived since then, and now you have new information and you had new experiences, and the situation's different. So maybe it's the right thing to continue to pursue that goal, but maybe it's not. Maybe pursuing another opportunity is okay too, and that's the flexibility piece. And then the
Yeah.
third thing is courage, because even when I recognize opportunity and I'm flexible enough to realize that, yeah, it's probably a good thing for me, I have to have the courage to make that leap and to go out into that unknown, that uncertainty that we were just talking about that can be so challenging. So that's what I'd leave people with, is opportunity comes all the time. We just need to recognize it, be flexible enough to see that it's good for us, and to have the courage to pursue it.
Brian, where can people find you, and what are some ways that you bring value to people today?
Oh, well, you can find me at brianhiteglobal.com, BRIANHITE global.com. That's my website. And you can find me on social media as well. I'm on Facebook, Brian C. Hite 1 on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Brian_Hite23. And I'm on LinkedIn. I believe that's Brian C. Hite 2. I don't know. If you look it up on LinkedIn and the picture looks like me, that's who I am. Also on the website, there are a few programs that I offer. One of them is on pressure. It's called Pressure X. So it's great that this is where you wanted to go with the conversation. But the programs are either 5 or 6 week programs. I have pressure, motivation, which is a big challenge for not only individuals, but leaders as well. And a 4-phased approach to peak performance that was, I don't know, we developed it when I was at the military. It really was grounded in the work that I did as a stuntman, though. that's where it kind of came out of. Those are 3 programs that you can check out on the website. There's more information about those. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, you can email me at brian@brianhiteglobal.com. You can contact me through the website, or you can even schedule a discovery call through the website as well. And you and I can have a conversation about whatever you got going on. So that's how you can get a hold of me.
Perfect. And people can find solutions to their specific programs if they will discover the discovery call, use the discovery call.
Yeah, absolutely. The discovery call, they can call me. We can talk about what it is. And I would tell them, if this is something you wanted to do, here's what I recommend. Either do the program, or we can do one-on-one coaching, whatever it is that I think, would probably be the most beneficial. But and again, that's it for individuals or leaders who are trying to bring in somebody to work with a team, or, I do speaking as well. So if what it is that I talked about on this podcast resonates with you, and you think that a larger audience that might benefit from it, and you want to put me in front of them, I'd be happy to do that. I really enjoy the speaking engagements as well. It's a lot of fun.
Links will be down in the description for not lazy people who would love to actually. Sometimes people like to hear it, but there are some people who will go and click on it. Thank you, Brian, for your time. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for the tips that you gave us. And I'm really excited that I kind of found out, for me personally, because this podcast is for me first and then for the listeners. And thank you for just sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
You're very welcome. I love doing these. It's so much fun doing the podcast, and I appreciate you having me on to have the conversation. I love talking about this material, so I appreciate you giving me that chance.
And thank you, listeners, for being here and listening. And hopefully, maybe even if you're stuck in traffic, you can apply Brian's tips, because that's also pressure and in dealing with everyday problems. Thank you for listening, and have an amazing day or night wherever you are. And until next time.